It's very different to lead through change than lead through chaos. Change, you know the outcome. Like I've got an idea, I've got a plan, and I'm going to get to it. It's constant. And that's what unmoors people. The people that are more agile and that can understand change is going to be something that happens no matter what, they're the ones that are going to be, they'll be standing tall. They'll be good.
From the news team at LinkedIn, I'm Jessie Hempel, and this is Hello Monday. It's our show about the changing nature of work and how that work is changing all of us. Change. That is the word that defines not only what our show is about, but what this moment is about, right? And there was a time earlier in my life when change felt like something to be weathered. When a change happened, I felt like I had time to get used to it. That's not how it is right now. In the spring and summer of 2025, change is just the constant. And anytime I start to adjust to how things are, I look up and they're different again. And this is just how it's going to be going forward. And that is a lot to wrap your mind around. That's what we're going to talk about today. Our guest is Lisa Bodell. She has this great book. It's called Why Simple Wins. And she's thought a lot about these things. She is an author and also a speaker. And the conversation we're going to have today, it's a really special one because we got to have it in person, not in a studio, but actually before a live audience. Last spring here at LinkedIn, we had a learning day. And this is a great place to do that because LinkedIn also has LinkedIn Learning. Lisa is a LinkedIn Learning instructor. We invited her before an audience of my peers to think out loud with me about how we all navigate this particular moment. This conversation left me feeling more empowered, more in control of the things that I get to control, and to be honest, more in possession of my joy. I hope it does the same for you. Here's Lisa.
There is a lot of change. In fact, I would argue there's a lot of chaos right now. Just the velocity and the variety and all, the volume of change. People want to get control. So the goal isn't to be able to react to change, but to drive it. Right? I don't want my team to constantly be reacting to the change that's put upon them. I want them to create the change that others have to follow or that's good for me. So for me, as long as we're using agility in a way that's proactive, not reactive, that's the goal.
Right. That sounds so good. Mm-hmm. But in truth, it can often feel like things happen to us, particularly in a work setting where, just looking around, no one here in this room is the actual CEO of LinkedIn, right? So maybe you're there, Ryan, if you're there with us. This question doesn't count for you. We're often in a position where we are learning about change. It's happening around us. Yeah. So how can we begin to understand where we have agency?
So, all right, I love the conversation about agency, right? Because it's very easy to say you don't have agency, but I like to have people focus on their sphere of control of what can I do, but also to realize, we're human. Things happen, okay? And so what I think we really want to be able to do with agility is be able to say there are things in our control that we can change. Our daily work, challenging the things that are on our to-do list, feeling like we're not just valuing ourselves if we're busy, but actually doing meaningful things. So if we can start getting into that mindset with people, and I know a lot of the stuff that LinkedIn does, that's fantastic.
Well, you talk about mindset. You look at what's going on, and so often one way to better understand what's going on and your own agency in it is to shift your own mindset. You're laughing at me.
I am, because and of course we have to change our own mindset. I think that's great. A lot of people, we were talking about this, I feel that they walk around and they think the problem is them.
Yeah.
And we get into kind of this cycle of like shame. Like everyone else seems to be doing it right. How am I not? Everyone else seems to be getting everything done. Why am I not? First of all, that's not true.
Right.
And I have a message I send to people that says, you're not the problem. And I think what we need to do is challenge the way we think about social norms at work and work norms. It's time for us to stop fixing people, right, to do more work. And we've got to start fixing work to better leverage the skills of our people. And that's a different mindset, right? So it's not me that I can't get everything done, but I've got to be able to have the power and the agency and the time to challenge work better. And then I can be more agile in the things that matter.
Okay, so I love this because so much of what you're talking about when you talk about that taking on yourself, I mean, who here hasn't thought, oh, I really should take another course on AI. I really got to understand this better or more. Or there's that, I've got a reading list of things that I'm definitely going to get to that folks I'm never going to get to. And I take the blame on myself. I'm like, if I were more disciplined, if I would just get up earlier, and then that leads to a shame spiral.
But this is the difference for me, because I also talk a lot about simplification. And by the way, I think a lot of agility has to do with getting rid of things, not trying to do everything. And
So I can just get rid of that reading list?
you can get rid of that reading list. You should, but it's this pressure you feel with the reading list.
Yeah.
To me, it's, I just thought if I could only be more organized, I would finally achieve that holy grail of work-life balance. And I knew no amount of color coding on my calendar to-do listing was going to get me to spreadsheet my way out of this thing. Because it's not that I needed better time management, I needed more time.
Yeah.
And so if there's not more time, I got to figure out what to get rid of so I can use that time more with intention. That to me is agility.
I just want to look around. Anybody who has thought in the last week, I wish I had more time, just raise your hand. Right? Just a couple of emojis and if you're with us virtually. Okay, so where do we get more time?
Well, okay, I've got a couple tricks so we can get more time. But first of all, we have to value it, because I know we will say, I bet I could ask any manager here or at my clients, I ask this, do you value thinking time? Everyone says yes. But if they saw someone just sitting around thinking, they'd be like, get back to work. That's or when I say to people, do you wish, I love that you did that. How many people wish they had more time? I always wish I had more time. But I think people feel guilty when they take time. I mean, how many people here have ever had to sneak a fake meeting on their calendar just to right? But we value
those
thinking.
folks who aren't raising your hands, we see you. We know.
They're looking around seeing if their boss is here. That's what the issue is. But you sneak a meeting on your calendar. If time was really, thinking time was really that valuable, deep work, you wouldn't be sneaking it. It would be mandatory. In fact, that is one of the key things with agility. So you said, how do you get more time? We're seeing a lot within organizations, mine, Accenture, some other folks I'll name, Pfizer. They are actually mandating that people carve out time for deep work.
Yeah.
For two reasons. One, they want to carve out time for deep work so they share with people that it is valued, it is expected, and they take away the fear of doing it, because there's a lot of fear.
Yeah.
That's why we're busy, right? Because we're feared that we're not relevant. And then the other thing is they want to take away excuses from people when they say, well, I don't have time to do things. Well, then don't spend all your time in your deep work time doing your emails. Do it for the real thinking. That's what we want to get to. So let's be intentional.
I love that. And I will say there are two challenges to that deep work. There's the organization making room for it. And then there's the work you have to do on yourself to actually make room for it. Right?
Yes.
And that sometimes can be a harder hurdle.
Well, okay. So here's one of the things. Let me ask the audience again another question.
Sure.
How many people would love to kill a stupid rule at work? Okay, we got the most hands with that.
Yeah,
right?
We did.
And by the way, congratulations, you're like everyone else. Because everyone says they want to kill a stupid rule. There are reasons for rules. Let me be very clear. There are good rules and bad rules. But the problem at work is we always value more, so we add more. And then we say be agile, but then we add more because more is more valuable. We've got to be able to teach people how to weed the garden. And what I mean by that is this one thing that we do called kill a stupid rule is a great way to get time back, because it says to people, get rid of the stupid things so we can make space for the real intentional things that drive change. And when people actually, with their bosses and permission, kill stupid rules, here's what they realize. Most of the things that drive people crazy and suck up their time, they're not rules. They're not rules. They're meetings and emails and, too many people in meetings, or not enough agendas in meetings, or dress code, whatever it is, but they're not rules. They're things in their sphere of control that they can get rid of and agree on. Let's change this norm. And then we have time for meaningful stuff.
So what do you say to the person who says, yeah, there are a lot of stupid rules, but I don't make those rules. My manager makes those rules. I have to do this meeting email every Friday. I don't think anybody even reads it. But
first of all, I feel it is true that the managers do make the rules, because I do kill a stupid rule with my team every quarter, and most of the rules that they come up with they want to kill are ones I put in place. So let's be really clear. But I don't know, with the best of intentions, we put things in place. Yeah. So it's a real learning for me. But the other thing is it unlocks for people, they realize that we do things out of habit that aren't necessary. And we don't challenge them because we don't realize we can, and two, we don't have time.
Yeah, and this maps to a larger observation that I feel like I, in my role as the host of Hello Monday, see coming up all the time, which is that we have for too long equated productivity with busyness.
Oh, yes.
And we make ourselves busier and busier and busier in the name of productivity until the moment when we look up and think, we're so busy being busy, we haven't been productive.
Well, and the minute, my favorite thing is when somebody says, how are you? People used to say, I'm good. Now when you say, how are you? You say, I'm busy. But then that creates the busy off. Oh, you think you're busy? I'm busy. I'm going to tell you how busy I am. And then it goes from there, right? Who's got more, the more busy I am, the more valuable I am.
Yeah.
So I agree. That's another shift we have to make in our mind is busy doesn't mean valuable.
Well, and as things move towards us faster, as our deliverables list grow, as we feel like we have to do more with less, there is the tendency to race at it. One thing I really like about the way that you see this problem is that you actually advocate for slowing down and simplifying.
Yes.
I want you to talk to us about how we do that and why it matters.
So if we really want people to have time to think, and we all do, if we really want to be able to use our time with intention and drive change, we have to have the space to do it. And so that means building in subtraction is just as important as addition at work. And so there's lots of ways to do that. Killing stupid rules is one of them. But even building in just the mantra that you are required to get rid of things, to stop doing things. In fact, we work with Sanofi, the pharmaceutical company.
Sure. And
one of the things that they build into strategic planning and project plans that I love is called this process called Stop It. And here's how it works, right? So every year, your team comes to you and says, here's all the strategic initiatives we're going to do. So many, way too many, because we want to look like we're very important, we're doing a lot of things. At Sanofi, they also have to present what they promised to stop doing. And what I love about that is, right, so it makes people think, well, what should we stop doing? What's outlived its time? And then they get permission to get rid of it. Yeah. Now, that to me is really healthy that you build it in that way, and it gives people the mindset that you don't have to be scared to subtract. In fact, we're looking at value, not volume. But some people will do it, some won't.
Well, and you can do that in the larger context of your organization. You can always also do that in your personal life, right?
Yes. And in fact, for your personal life, I actually, when I started doing Kill Stupid Rules, I did it for my personal life too. And because most of the things that we do with the best of intentions, right? We get big to-do lists and lots of rules and overwhelmed because we say yes to things out of obligation.
It is hard to say no.
It's hard to say no. And it's even harder in your personal life because then it's, what if it's your friends' kids or parents or whatever it is, or something. I don't want to miss out. I don't want to cause something. But at some point you have to. You have to be able to say no. So I looked at my list of things that just drove me crazy. A lot of it had to do with carpools, by the way, ironically. And I just had to put boundaries around like how many communications I needed around a carpool, how many times I was going to volunteer at school. But I also started using a phrase that I really like called yes if. And this is one of my favorite tricks for everybody here, as you probably know. Everyone will tell me, I'm not a boss, I can't say no.
Yeah.
Or, right, you have kids, I have kids.
I do.
It's so hard to say no to things. When people ask you, could you just work at this fundraiser or whatever it is, say yes if, and there's a trade-off, if I'm able to get this done, if we're able to change the priorities, if you're able to juggle X, Y, Z, if you could give this to someone else, because then it becomes less about taking someone's time and being able to put boundaries or guardrails around the transaction of time. Because I have to say, time's a non-renewable resource. We will never get it back, but we don't get mad when people steal our time, like we get mad when people steal our money.
I mean, that is so true.
And we have to start doing that because, a lot of people have money, but they don't have time.
Yeah.
And it's okay to want to put boundaries around it.
We probably need a follow-up practice course on putting boundaries on, because you listen to these things. You listen to people give you really great information about how to do this.
It's easy.
And then you're face-to-face with your mother-in-law and you have to explain why you're not going to make dinner on Sunday.
That's a family limiting move. Right.
I know you're listening, Camille. I'll make dinner on Sunday. Okay.
So true.
I want to go a little deeper into mindset shifts and how we deploy them. And you talk through one exercise that I really love, which is, I'm going to get the title wrong, but something to the effect of just say yes to the worst idea you've ever heard.
Oh, that's great.
Okay.
That's great.
So this is a really effective device to actually do a number on how you think about things.
So the idea is, how do you, make lemonade out of lemons?
Yeah.
Which is really easy to say, right? But it's kind of like, here's how it works. It's an improv trick. You actually assign one person to be the CEO or the boss and the other person to be the deliverer of bad news. And let's say there's a scenario of we're opening up, I don't know, a bowling alley. And it's 5 days before launch, and your team comes in and they just start giving you bad news. Hey, bad news, none of the bowling balls arrived. And you have to answer with, you know what, that's great. Because everyone uses bowling balls, we're gonna use cantaloupes. And it's gonna be amazing and messy, and it's gonna turn out to be like a fruit salad and a healthy game. And you just keep going with that. Bad news, the bowling pins explode. This is gonna be the most incredible extravaganza now at our bowling alley. And you just keep going, and it makes you think about how do you actually see the good in situations rather than getting into that negative loop that we all seem to fall into easily.
Yeah. Well, so as you're thinking about that, I'm thinking, well, okay, that's fine. And also I need to put that into practice in my real life. And in my real life, sometimes all I can see is negative consequences. Like, I'm going to tell you the truth. As soon as you said that, I thought, oh my God, the legal problems if the cantaloupes start blowing up.
But that's the problem, right? Is that we've kind of trained ourselves to look for the worst case scenario, not the best case scenario. And this is the futurist in me, which is, there's possible, there's probable, and there's preferable scenarios.
Right.
And anything's possible, but not everything's preferable. And so what we've got to make sure we do is spend more time in our planning up front and create those worst case scenarios, we call them red scenarios, and the green scenarios. And that really opens up the mindset for more innovation from people. Because otherwise, that's the difference in agility, right? I'm just reacting, what if this happens, versus what if the good thing actually worked?
Yeah.
And we don't give ourselves enough time to think that way.
I want to talk to the human side of work for a few minutes before we open up the questions. In this moment, it can feel easy to lose the empathy piece. And I'm curious if you have any thoughts and advice for us on how we continue to center humans through change.
Wow. I do. I mean, I want to say to everybody here, it is perfectly human to resist change. I mean, that's really what we're designed to do, right? If anything comes at us and it's negative, the first thing we do is we downshift and it's fight or flight. But the thing about empathy that's really interesting to me, and this really goes with agility, this is the human side and what we do better than AI. This is what we do in terms of creative problem solving. This is what we do in terms of creativity. I guess what I'm thinking about with empathy is more like, how do we have the time to actually have that softer side? And so to me, one of the benefits of agility is actually the ability to be the humans that we really are versus kind of the robots that we are forced to be at work because we have so much to do. So one of the things that's happening right now, and this is a longer answer, is people are burned out.
Yeah.
And that's one of the issues right now is we have so much to do and we are burned out and our fuse gets shorter. Mine does. And if we had more time to focus on the meaningful, people would feel like their time is valued. They would have more time to be empathetic if somebody was a little late on a project. And I think that we would just, we would feel better about ourselves. We would have a better mindset overall. Agility is important from a mental health perspective.
So I love what you said there about the fact that people's fuses are shorter. They're shorter because of what's happening within work, but also more broadly.
I think it's
right.
I think
There's
it's
a
everything.
fragility right now to the experience of being human. And we can't race through the cycle of emotions that come with that.
But we do.
And we do. And so what you said at the very beginning of your answer is really relevant, which is like change doesn't feel good. And so if you were in a moment where you were like, this does not feel good, it's okay. You can be in that moment before you move past that moment. That is really critical.
I think it's human. Yeah. That's the other thing too, is I think also having leaders that model that you're not always putting on the, hey, everything's going to be great.
Yeah.
But being a little vulnerable, I think that really helps because showing the human side, we talk about human-centered leadership, but I don't think we do it from a very human perspective.
Yeah.
We do it from a process perspective.
Yeah.
And that's different.
Okay, I want to bring in a few other voices. Do we have any questions?
I love this conversation around creating space to be more human because I agree with you. We've trained ourselves to focus on productivity, sometimes at the expense of being human. So if you were to give a piece of advice to a person that's going back to their desk after this session today to encourage them to be more human in this moment, what is the most critical thing they could do leaving today?
To be more human. I like giving people more control over their work. And that's where I get back to subtraction. And I can't say it enough to people. It's not enough to tell somebody they're empowered when they are overwhelmed, because it's so easy to say, right? You are empowered, and all they hear is do the work of 5 people, right? You know what your priorities are, and they have 80 priorities. So until we actually empower people to get rid of, as opposed to just add, I don't feel like they're going to have a sense of control. So the best thing we can do as bosses is actually reiterate that. What should we stop doing? What should we get rid of? And then give them the clarity around what they're allowed to do. Then they'll move faster. People want to do good work, right? I mean, think about it. People will work so hard to the point of exhaustion if they feel like it's doing something, if it's meaningful, right? Because it feels energizing then. But when they're working on too many things, not energizing. Yeah.
So we're all going to go back to our offices and choose one thing we're going to stop doing. And ask the people around us to do the same.
I would.
I think we have another,
Thank you, Lisa, so much. I have a question from the live streamer watchers online.
Yeah.
In your work experience with organizations over the past 20 plus years to the now, what human skills beyond the ones you've named here already, empathy, agility, and resilience, are coming much more core with the rise of AI? And how should we be developing those?
Well, I mean, here's what it gets back to, right? Like, wow, all of a sudden everybody's focused on soft skills. Who knew? Because those are the things that humans are good at. I mean, we were laughing before this. I'm glad that everybody's finally catching up with, like, my business, LinkedIn. Like, we've been saying this forever, but now people realize that we over-indexed on some of the hard things. So what do I think they are? I mean, empathy, context, creative thinking, I think creative problem solving. Yes, AI can do that, but sometimes you get the answers and you're like, but I've heard all those before. And I also think the other thing is having people in the room that are diverse voices. And what I mean by that is the unusual suspects are the ones that always come up with the best answers because they come at it from a unique perspective. And so I do think those are things that humans are particularly good at, but making sure that we're not just answering everything with AI, but bringing other voices into the room, that's where we're really going to get a lot of innovation. And that's what sets us apart as humans.
As you say that, I think about how, like, in the moment that we're in, it is easy to tell ourselves that, like, things have never moved this fast. And things have never been this chaotic. And this is somehow an exceptional moment in history. And maybe in the 1910s, they felt like that too, when suddenly there were toilets in houses and electric lights. I don't know. The reality is probably more nuanced. Probably the idea that we have needed to manage speed with grace has been consistent.
I think we need to manage speed. I think the velocity, and the veracity of the speed is what's getting people very unmoored. I mean, there's a lot of things that are kind of taking people from it's a complex time to it's a chaotic time. And the difference I'm hearing right now is it's very different to lead through change than lead through chaos. Change, you know the outcome. Like I've got an idea, I've got a plan, and I'm going to get to it. Chaos, you don't. It's like having black swans everywhere, right? It's constant. And that's what unmoors people. So that's why we want to have more of a sense of control around things. Do I think the change...
Is chaos a static state, or is chaos our perception when we don't feel we have control?
I think it's a perception we don't have control, but I've been really thinking about this, actually. That's the thing about chaos, is we're not sure why it's happening. And that's what makes it even harder. I can lead through change and complexity because maybe it's happening and I know why and I don't like it, which is different with chaos, which is I don't like it and I don't understand why it's happening. That's more of an emotional state and harder to lead through, I think. So, anyway, do I think that the change is any different? I think the velocity and the variety is. And I think because of that, people resist it more because they can only tolerate so much.
Yeah.
The people that are more agile and that can understand change is going to be something that happens no matter what, they're the ones that are going to they'll be standing tall. They'll be good.
You know, you mentioned burnout. You sort of slipped that in passing. And I know here at LinkedIn on my own team, we have wrestled at various points with burnout and trying to understand it and trying to approach it. Do you have any big thoughts for us on how we might address it on our teams?
Well, one of the things is defining what meaningful work is, because that gives you the compass.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of us, when you think about it, we don't have enough control around our time. I mean, I like to say to people, you are not leading or managing, you are executing your calendar. That is basically what you do every day. You get up and you're like, I'm just going to get through this thing. Mm-hmm. That's not a good way to live. And so the more we can get control around our time, right, getting rid of things and defining what meaning is, that's what gets rid of burnout. because I know why it's happening, and I can finally have space to think.
That
gives us
insight
control.
is, I think, really key, that idea of defining what meaning is and creating the space to do it. Because I think so often we try to solve burnout with take a week.
But see, here's the difference. I don't want to tolerate change or tolerate things that are bad. I want to get rid of it so I have the space to do better things and drive it. There's a difference between dealing with it and driving it. And I think too much of what we do every day is we teach people how to deal with things.
Yeah.
Versus be able to overcome things.
Right.
And so that's a very big difference, right? I don't need to have a better organized to-do list. I need to have less of a to-do list. And so I don't need to deal with all this. I need to be able to drive just this. They're different, right?
Yeah, I really hear that. Last call for questions. Anybody?
Each person has a different definition of meaning of what's important to them. Each person is going to define the amount of chaos they can handle. So when you think about coaching leaders on how to create that space between individuality and how they describe it, what are some tips you have for that?
If you talk to a lot of leaders, I talk to a lot of leaders, and I said, do you value meaningful work? Oh, yes, we focus on meaningful work. I mean, I laugh because I do the same thing with my team, right? Oh, meaningful work, yeah. But I actually sat down with my team. I said, well, let's define what meaningful work is. I couldn't define it. It took me 4 or 5 sentences. And so what we did together is we defined it. And I said, why don't you list everything you spend your day doing? And you know what everyone listed? Meetings and emails, and it's the work of work. But I said, what do you wish you spent your day doing? Like, if we actually got time back, what would you want to do? Here's what's so interesting. People don't know. They have to take a minute because they don't think about it. We complain about it. Well, I wish I had more time to do important things. Oh, well, like what? And so then they define it. It's usually, interestingly, like meeting with external partners or brainstorming or coming up with creative problem solving. And what you're doing is you are defining together what meaningful work is. And what's great about that is then you can have a conversation with your team and arrive at it, and then you can use that as the compass for looking at your priority list. And it makes people feel safe.
That was Lisa Bodell, best-selling author and LinkedIn learning instructor. You should totally check her out on the platform. And I'm just going to say, I am walking away with a lot of concrete takeaways from this episode, right, folks? The first thing, the biggest thing, is that you should design your North Star around meaningful work. What is meaningful work for you? Get clarity around that, and then tie your priority list to that. That is how you're going to guarantee that when you walk away from your day, you walk away with something that matters to you, not just the checked off to-do list. Okay, second, subtraction is your friend. What can you get rid of in your calendar that will free up the time for you to put against that top priority list? For me, I can tell you right away, I'm going to stop scrolling Instagram between meetings, and especially first thing in the morning. You heard me say it. Let's see if I can do it. Okay, finally, and this is a big one, your soft skills really matter for navigating change in particular. Empathy, listening, communicating. Build these. Pay attention to them. Now, if you want to talk about this more, I really hope you do. You should come to office hours this week. I just feel like it's going to be a good one. As usual, I will get together with our senior producer, Sarah Storm, on Wednesday afternoon at 3 p.m. Eastern. That's noon on the West Coast, so bring your lunch or your coffee, whatever you like, and join us. I will throw a link in the show notes. And if you like the episode, I hope you'll share it. Or leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, anywhere you listen to your podcasts. It really helps other people find the show, and that matters a lot to me. I want to thank you so much for joining for this week's episode. I am Jessie Hempel. This is Hello Monday, and we'll be right back here next week.